First of all, you have to make sure that all of the lights, you can just disengage them or turn them off. Actually, the last fridge that I have, you cannot actually do that because the fridge is based on some computer system. But with my fridge, what it does, there are actually magnets that I put in different places on top of the fridge, and what actually happens is it disengages all the lights. So you have to be careful, first of all, if you don't have Sabbath mode, not to use the water or the ice maker in that way. Now what about the lights? What about the fact that when I open up the freezer, sometimes if I leave the freezer open enough, what will happen is these lights will re-engage. You know, that's the purpose, to say that it's going down. What you do is, all you got to do is you got to cover over these lights. Then it makes it halachically permissible because you're not actually benefiting from the lights. It's called the psik reisha de lo nichale. You're not benefiting from it, doesn't help you at all. That's extremely important because without that leniency, many refrigerators on the market, literally if you move into a house, you have to go buy yourself a new freezer, and that's not the halachic requirement. One other thing to remember, if you don't have a Sabbath mode, your ice maker will still be making ice on Shabbat. And the rule is you are not allowed to use the new ice that is made on Shabbat. So you might want to empty out everything before, put it in a bucket, put it in the freezer, because you're not allowed to use any new ice that would have been made on Shabbat.
So if you open up your oven and the light comes on, same issue as the fridge. So what do we do about it? Again, certain ovens have a Shabbat mode, and certain ovens it's very easy to unplug the light bulb.
The biggest concern that people might have, and this has to do with our next conversation, is warming up food on Shabbat morning. The rule is that if you have food that's 100% cooked before Shabbat, even if it is dry, even if there's no liquid, and there are halachically permitted ways to warm up dry, completely cooked food on Shabbat morning, but you would not be able to warm it up by putting it into oven. And this is a special halachic concern called mechzik mevushel. It appears like you're cooking. So again, if you have your oven on Shabbos morning, even if you have it on Sabbath mode, so I'm going to open the oven, the light will not turn on, I cannot take my chicken, my schnitzel out of the fridge, even if there's no liquid there, I'm not allowed to put it in the oven because then it appears as if you are cooking. You have it on before Shabbat, let's say it's on 350, right before Shabbat, just turn off the oven. If you turn off the oven, it will still remain warm so that your food can stay warm or hot for Shabbat. And if in fact the oven is turned off and the lights are disengaged, then there'll be no problem with opening and closing the oven and taking the food out for your Friday night dinner.
Can you think of anything sadder on a cold winter Shabbat than cold food for your entire Shabbat? I mean, that's just sad.
That would be wrong according to Judaism, because that's what the Sadducees used to do. We want to have warm food on Shabbat.
We want to have warm food warms our soul. It doesn't just warm our kishka. So the first thing you can use is a warming drawer. These are terrific. And what happens is it basically is at a fairly low temperature, and in a constant low temperature. There's no thermostat or anything in here, and you can put your food in here. Again, Shabbat morning, you can put all your cooked solid food, even if there is a little bit of liquid, that's totally fine. I think it has to be less than half.
Yeah, as long as majority solid.
As long as majority. It's a plata. And these are terrific. You plug them in before Shabbat.
It's so shiny, Suzanne.
And you can put your food right on here. And does this need to be covered with anything? No. This is probably the greatest thing that any Jewish family has ever owned. This is really how you would get your sauces and your soups warm before Shabbat, and then you can have it for warm for either dinner or for lunch.
Oh.
Rabbi Antin just had my mushroom barley soup a few weeks ago, and he can attest to the fact that it's
Hold on.
good.
How was it?
It was delicious. It was great.
I'm standing right here. What's
Thank
he
God
gonna
to the
say?
crock pot. When you actually are going to take food out of the crock pot, whether it's soup or my favorite cholent, you actually cannot put the ladle directly into the crock pot. The idea is, since it's still on the heating element, if you put it in, it's called hagasa or megas. You're mixing up the food, and that's going to be something that might hasten the cooking of the food. So you have to remove the inside out of the crock pot, off of the element before you serve it. You have food in your crock pot. Let's say it's a cholent or a soup, and let's say you're planning on serving it for lunch, but you want to have it. It's a long Shabbos afternoon. You want to have your soup a little bit later in the afternoon, and you're going to have leftovers. would there be any way to take the food out of the crock pot and then actually put it back in so that you don't have to, so you could serve it later on? And the answer is yes. And here are the conditions that have to be met. First of all, the food has to be fully cooked at the time that you're taking it out. That's number one. Number two, after you take it out, have intention when you take it out that you will put it back. Number three, keep one hand on the actual crock pot as you're serving it. And number four, the contents, the food that's in there, cannot have fully cooked out. As long as they're still warm and all those other conditions are met, then the halacha is, after you serve your soup, you put it into a serving container, you can take the crock pot, put it back in, and enjoy your soup a little bit later on.
More mushroom barley for you, Rabbi.
Absolutely, right? One other very nice tip about the crock pot, let's say I don't have that fancy warming drawer, and I don't have this wonderful hot plate to warm food up. The crock pot also is another way to halachically warm up cold food on Shabbat. What would you do? What you do is, if you have your crock pot, you invert the lid. Take your chicken, you take your pan, you put it right here an hour or two before lunch, and then people will come for lunch, and you can have warm food. Again, it has to be dry, and it can have a little bit of liquid, but it can't be a majority of liquid. And if you have that situation, then that would be a way to halachically use your crock pot, the top of your crock pot, to warm up food on Shabbat.
So, you've made a delicious soup for Friday night dinner, or maybe it's even the kind of soup that can simmer on your cooktop till Shabbat lunch. So, you really want to use your cooktop. There's a device you can put on it. It's called a blech.
A what?
A blech.
Can you spell that?
I think it's B-L-E-C-H.
Do you
I'm
agree?
sure-
I think so. That's the halachic ruling on
And
blech.
it's not something that's blechy. It's something actually very useful and helpful. I use this little one. It's called a diffuser if you're looking for it. Some people have a whole sheet of metal. Some people even get them to fit their cooktop. Now, the rules that you were talking about before with serving it, it's the same idea. I would imagine that you would take this off, hold on to the pot,
Absolutely,
put it
right.
back on.
The blech would work for that.
Same idea as the crock pot. And again, you can't turn off the flame after you've eaten. You'd have to turn off the flame after Havdalah.
Going back to the actual blech, oftentimes people have one that spreads out over the entire range or just over parts of it. There are some opinions that say that it is important to cover the knobs. All right? Some people say it's more important to cover the source of the flame. Others say it's more important to cover the knobs. There's a debate about it. If you can cover both, that's wonderful. If not, if you don't cover the knobs, there are certainly opinions to rely on and you'd be okay.